Welcome back to another episode of the Capital Press Club Legacy Podcast. I'm Dr. Colin Campbell, and I am welcoming you to episode number 24 in our podcast. Of course, we always start out with this day in Black history. And on this day in Black history, more accurately, November 18th, Robert Chambliss was convicted in his complicity or his conspiratorial collaboration with the Birmingham bombing in 1963, where 4 black girls were bombed in a church on their way to school. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And he later died at a health and medical facility at the age of 81, always saying that he was innocent. Now, what's interesting about this case and the Birmingham bombing was that it was originally closed. It was shut down in 1968, but it was later discovered that there was some evidence that was not given to prosecutors and that was not previously released by the FBI. So the case was reopened, and there were men that were retried. Chambliss was one of them, and again, sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiracy in that bombing. He later died at the ripe old age, actually, of 81 years old. So he was still able to live a full life, even though he was convicted in this bombing. And like I said, he always said that he was innocent. Well, with more for the Capital Press Club Legacy Podcast and some of the issues that affect our media today, I bring into the fold my man, Derek Kenny. And Derek, a lot going on this week. We're going to start out with the Comcast announcement to sell MSNBC and some other channels like Oxygen, the Oprah Network, O Network. So they are looking to possibly put all of these channels together, separate Comcast from these channels so that they can concentrate more on production and just, I guess, adjust for the fact that we're seeing an attrition of subscribers and attention in cable news. You're a cable subscriber, right, DK?
I am. I'm a proud cable subscriber. I'm especially proud last night when I was watching Netflix buffering and stalling. Cable's reliable. I'm still old school. I like to go sit in my chair, recline, lean back, get the remote control, hit the power button, and find a channel. Sometimes I don't feel like finding an app, then finding something to watch, and then watching that, and then going through that. Sometimes I want to turn my TV and let my TV work and do what it does. But the apps have their place. There's a lot of great content out there, and a lot of the content is overlapping now. So it's a little more complex now. Even as you try to plan out your budget, you got to kind of figure out, Disney has Marvel and Hulu. Do you get Hulu that also has some of the shows I like that's on Paramount? And do you get Paramount because some of their shows are on Hulu? And then you got to go through a whole planning process, and it's a little complex. So I'm waiting to see how things kind of, when you have a new market, all the entrants jump in there, everyone's well financed, and then at some point they got to make money, right? So now Hulu has to make money. I think Comcast owns Hulu. Netflix has to make money, and Netflix is making a profit by making money, making a profit. And now Comcast is kind of, which is an interesting move, because they're selling off some of these assets. They're really selling off maybe some of the rights to their to those apps, the MSNBC app, the whatever other types of apps, whatever that are associated with those brands. It's interesting they're getting out of the content brand.
Yeah, they have Peacock as well. We have to remember that's part of the part of the package too, is Peacock, and Peacock has actually had a lot of success over the past few years, putting their programming on streaming platforms, promoting some extra content. And I think they want to go into development there because they saw an increase in subscribers by the millions with their Peacock app. So I think they want to put more R&D and investment into Peacock because, again, this goes in line with the current trend of streaming, like you were doing last night on Netflix, I believe you said, watching the Mike Tyson fight, and dealing with the frustrations there. But you are like millions of people dealing with that frustration because that's the preferred method that people are now or have been jumping to get their content rather than watching it on traditional cable. Now, I've been unplugged since, or I cut the cord, I think is the term, 2000. So I have not had cable since then. So what is this, 2024, 16 years. net cable. I used to have
Wow.
DirecTV. Make a long story short, felt they were a bit unfair with some of their charging practices, so I decided to
Okay.
cut the cord then. And now I get broadcast TV, and then I just, my streaming
Yep.
platforms choice.
Like, you have a good point there. Like you can still get a lot of channels with just an antenna, right? An
Yeah,
antenna and a digital encoder or something, or most TVs, if you have the antenna, they can pick up the terrestrial HD channels that are available. Yeah, so you don't need to pay for anything to really just to watch your broadcast news channels, NBC, Fox, whatever else that's available in the local area. But I will say though that Peacock, whether they're, I just looked it up, they're not quite profitable yet. So a lot of
mm,
these are ventures that are well invested that haven't really yielded profit yet. But the investors don't seem to stop investing. So well, as long as the money's there, those a lot of those apps will be there. It'll be interesting to see in the next 5 years how they consolidate, whether it's like bundling or formally consolidate, and how that will impact the way we get our news and information. Because at the end of the day, we really need to make sure we have easy and full access to news and information. And I'd argue that that should be free. That should be something that's free, the news and information, and we could get that from our antennas. You get that with your cable bundle, but that's just not necessarily free. But yeah, that's really concerning. Though I would like to see more about the how what Comcast does, and then how other large entities that also provide the means to which you can view streaming content and cable content start separating themselves from the creative part of the business. So I wonder if Verizon's going to do something, or AT&T is going to do something similar, where they might start separating themselves. It'd be interesting to see.
yeah, you have Peacock that, although I guess it's not profitable yet, that's where they're putting a lot of their attention because we have to
Mm,
remember even the Summer Olympics was hosted by Peacock. So they're really trying to pull a lot of their viewers over to that streaming platform. So I guess it will eventually be very profitable, especially since that's where the current trends are indicating a lot of movement and a lot of attention, where you're
yeah,
seeing a lot of people moving away from the traditional cable news model,
right.
looking for in various ways on different streaming platforms,
Hmm.
not just the products of legacy media, but also YouTube, also X, also
Yeah,
Inst- people get their news in different nuanced ways on established platforms in the internet space that were previously used for other things. That's where people are getting their news and information from, including
yeah,
Facebook. And
yeah.
that started, I would say, back in, again, around that time, I would say 2000. Michael Jackson died in 2008 or 2009. I remember tweeting that out and putting it on Facebook, and people following my tweets and
Hmm.
Facebook after Michael Jackson died before they were going to regular news programming. Of course,
Yeah,
with it and legacy media caught up with it after that. But initially, it was something put out by TMZ, and then people started tweeting that news, and that's what people were following at first.
yeah,
That's this time I was really aware of people looking for alternative ways to get their news and information, and of course,
right.
it's only grown since then.
Yeah, and I think this the challenge for modern news professionals or modern information professionals is you can't just use one way of communicating things. You got to use the mix. You got to be in social media. You got to, of course, still send it to traditional or media legacy. I guess now it's called legacy media, like newspapers and TV stations. But it's on you as well as individuals, even if you're a news reporter, to share the news yourself on your own platform, whether it's on Twitter or X or Facebook or TikTok. A lot of people are getting a lot of cool stuff on TikTok, and residents or people in general want news of the moment. They want the shaky cell phone video the second something's happening from the location, even faster than a camera and a crew can get out to a location. They want to see something on X, or maybe a live stream from a reporter reporting live with a cell phone. You know, it's a different environment, different expectations, and so many different ways to get information. I just wonder when the dust settles and people start getting to my age where they don't want to look at so many different options to get what they want. They just want to kind of go. I just want to go here and click this, or talk to this, and I get what I want. I wonder what it's going to look like when the dust settles, because it's still a relatively new market, all these apps and stuff, and whether or not a place like Twitter or X that's trying to be all things to all people, or Facebook that provides a lot of really good video content, live video content, and news and information, and they're combined with Instagram is also another source of news and information and entertainment. What's the future going to be?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited though to see what it will be.
I think it's going to be interesting to see these developments, obviously, to see what people's habits are as they adapt. And we're seeing that in real time. I mean, one of the things that we can talk about as well is Shop with BET. It's a new platform that is launching where it's going to focus on Black owned businesses, Black commerce. Black mercantilism, to use an archaic term, but it's going to be focused on people for Black people of Black people and selling their things online. And I think again, this is where you're seeing more people instead of going to the brick and mortar stores, buying their products online. Of course, Amazon is a huge indicator of that, a marketplace giant. Well, I think they're trying to nuance this and trying to specify this for Black sellers and Black promoters and Black business people who are selling their content online as well. So think of the Home Shopping Network and how popular that's been, HSN, and now they're doing something similar at BET, but focused on Black products and Black entrepreneurism. So I think that'll be interesting. One of the hosts is supposed to be Mara Kamp, a woman I used to work with many years ago when I was at BET. She worked in CBS and NewsPath, and she was a good friend of mine back then. I think she's going to be one of the hosts, and I believe there's another woman too in her 30s who's also going to be hosting the show. And I think it's going to, again, kind of take on that Home Shopping Network format where they're selling Black products. And I think that that's a great marketplace for us to expand Black wealth and to focus on things that might be more culturally related instead of things that are just kind of blanket. We could say, hey, this has a more of an impact when we're making a specific purchase.
All right.
Do you try to buy Black products, Derek, when you're out shopping? Do you try to
Yeah,
buy?
and I think
Yeah.
because of oh yeah, oh definitely. I think it's important to try to help your money circulate several times before it goes out. And for a lot of us, it's just shopping local. Like you shop in your
Mhm.
neighborhood, if you shop in your network, when you support your family or your cousin or your uncle's businesses, a lot of times you're supporting African American businesses without even knowing because they're providing good services, it's good quality, and it's available to you close to where you live. And then also some of it is available to you just a click or button push away from being able to buy things. And I think passively I do so, and then actively when available I do so as well. But I also support major brands as well, like any other person, American. But I do realize the value, as other groups do, Jewish people or I think Asian Americans are able to boast that money circulates in their community several times before it goes out to the broader American public, which is not it was not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a nature of a close knit community. You tend to support and buy from those closest to you, and many of us, like myself, live in communities that are a majority African American. So many of the businesses I encounter and the people I encounter are African American as well.
Yeah. The host of this show, Shop with BET, again, Mar Campo, and then KJ Smith is the other person. And then Gabrielle Richards is supposed to help with some of the more clothing related collaborations that will be sold on there. So you have three ladies up there talking about the latest in Black fashion, Black
Mm-hmm.
products. So that'll be interesting. Now, this is done in cooperation with a group called Sistus Media. That's Cistus, Sistus Media, and they're putting this all together to bring a different type of merchandising to the public, one that we haven't seen before, obviously one that specifies on clothing and goods that are sold within the frame of Black entrepreneurship. So I think this is kind of a space that does need to be developed more, especially when it comes to developing Black wealth and trying to keep money within our society before it is spent and before it leaves our communities for other communities who are then capitalizing on the hard-earned dollars that are made by Black Americans. And what's interesting too is that we do spend a lot. The figures are just more sometimes disproportionately higher than you would think for our population and what we spend on various things, whether it is entertainment, whether it is various products and goods and services. We do spend a lot of money and put it back into the American economy,
Yeah, yeah.
really getting that that money back or the benefits of contributing as much as we do to the American economy. When you look at some of the wealth deficits in various states across the nation, you'll see that the average white household is worth sometimes more than twice as much as the average Black household. And you wonder why that is. Well, you have a lack in home ownership, you have a lack of opportunity, you have people who do have homes, they may be undervalued. And again, the money that's spent is not going back into building up Black communities, it's going back into other communities and building those up instead. So again, will this show Shop with BET resolve all of those issues? No, definitely not. But it is a step and it is a way for more Black entrepreneurs to show off their goods and provide more services. And maybe this could be a model for other pockets of our population to do similar types of programming where you're promoting Black business, where you're promoting cultural equity within business and showing that it doesn't have to be hyper capitalistic and basically demonstrating the exploitation of a particular society for the benefit of other communities and societies. So this could be a very positive development. I'm kind of curious to see where it will go and then who will pick up on it as like I said, a model for other types of platforms.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if it's building on the trend in social media where you have influencers like Keith Lee and others that are going to small Black businesses. Whether in the instance of Coach Keith Lee, he's going to small food shops and all across the country and giving them a boost in sales. Um, I wonder if that same type of positive exposure that also yields positive results in terms of views and support for the influencer. One of that's a trend that BT is trying to capitalize on, as well as the popularity of shows like Shark Tank, where you're able to highlight businesses that are small or up and coming that need support. But I think it's great where you can combine some type of altruistic benefit to a community or to a business community or a large community like African Americans, while still trying to boost your ratings, your business goals. I think it's a great idea. If it works, I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm kind of curious to see. I believe that they had a broadcast not too long ago. It's either they had one this week or it's coming out in the next upcoming week, and then they'll have another one. So again, it's not quite a regular feature of BET just yet, but I think
Hmm.
they're testing out the market to see if it's something that they could do more on a consistent basis. And we can't, of course, cannot ignore the timing of all of this as we approach the holiday season, and people will be looking to make more purchases, looking for those ideas of what to buy for their loved ones. As every year, it seems to be that struggle of what to purchase. Here comes a different opportunity and a nuanced way and a new platform for people to find new ideas and look at different things that they may want to buy that they hadn't thought of before. So it'll be interesting to see and how they develop this idea and this collaboration into something a lot bigger, which again could be used as a model for other people looking to do something similar to build Black wealth within uh, purchasing products and merchandising and things like that. So yeah, it'll be definitely interesting and something to keep our eye on, if not even for places to buy things for our loved ones as the holidays are quickly approaching. So
All right, all right,
cool.
yeah.
Let's move on to our next story about Trick Daddy. Now, Trick Daddy
Trick Daddy, all right, hey.
making waves in the media world about his proclamations that he is not African American. And this is a phrase that we have wrestled with ever since
Mm,
Jesse Jackson came out with it, I believe in the 80s when he was running for president or on the campaign trail where he talked about Black Americans being African American. And the reason why he did that was to show that we have a unique struggle and experience beyond what white Americans have and what immigrants face. It's even those who might have been indentured servants. A lot of people will argue that Irish people were also slaves and blah blah blah. Not to what's the word, de-emphasize
hmm
or uh, diminish.
Diminish, yeah.
Diminish, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Diminish the Irish experience, but when it comes to Black Americans, the African American experience, it is definitely unique and more. It's definitely elongated, and in many ways, a lot more brutal than what Irish Americans faced in their period of indentured servitude, which, as we know, was pretty limited, and then they were able to still reap the benefits of whiteness later on, even after this period where that's something that Black Americans still haven't been afforded. Again, yes, we can look at the richest among us. We can look at the Oprah Winfreys and the Michael Jordans and the
hmm
Tyler Perrys, but we have to remember we know maybe 10 people, 10 super rich, uber rich Black
Yeah.
Americans of the tens or hundreds of millions
hmm
that actually exist in the country. And then when we look from state to state at the wealth gap, we realize that Black Americans still have not surpassed some of the restrictions and impediments that they had from slavery era. So that's what makes it a unique experience, which is why that term African American has been applied. But then you have those who say, well, maybe we're more American Africans. Maybe we should put American first, and that
hmm
word should the preeminent word in our description. But again, with that extra descriptor of being African to show again our unique experience. Trick
Yeah.
Daddy says he's not African American.
Mhm. Hey, and I think we are one of the unique people in this country that can truly say we are American first. We was talked about our tendency to spend money because we're children of capitalism. A lot of us trace our roots back to um, some part of America, some part of Virginia, where there may have been ingest areas for slaves coming in from across the Atlantic Ocean, right? And that's where the extent of our literal known history is. So, as a culture, as a people, a lot of us, our experiences or our knowledge of our history, of course, we know that we come from somewhere in Africa, but it takes a lot more research and a lot more inference to determine which tribe you came from and who your peoples might be. But we're different from other black peoples where if you're an African that migrated to America in the last 100 years or so, you shouldn't be considered African American. There should be a distinction. I think if you're from Ghana, you should be a Ghanaian American. If you're from Botswana, you're a Botswanan American, just like the same way that people from Russia would be Russian American, or someone from Italy would be Italian American. And then if you're looking at race, then we're all black. So whether that you're an immigrant or whether that you're indigenous, or I like to say have lived the diaspora of the African Americans through slavery, then you're all black. So that's a black term, but with many things, especially this day and time, we self-identify. So I think Trick Daddy and others and all of us, is up to us to find out what we want to be called. Years ago, was colored was acceptable. Now, if you refer to somebody as colored, even when you try to articulate the name of the NAACP, was the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, it may not be as politically correct saying colored. But then black is very general, and then African American is a bit more specific. But in a country where we we minimize the gravity and diversity of Africa by saying lumping all Africans or African immigrants as African Americans as well, when really they're peoples from one of the 50 or so countries in Africa. So I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to identifying Black people in America. We're a lot more diverse than people know, and I think a lot of us, like Trick Daddy, have different ideas of how we like to be identified, and I think that's valid. And I think it's cool for him to step up and say, as an African American, how he feels. Like a lot of us, our culture begins here, or our history begins here. We don't care about the implied history, which is very painful, or in some ways, we care more about our great-great-grandmama who helped to get our first relative through elementary school, and to buy that first piece of land, and to get the family house, and to make those good meals that sustained us. So there's a lot of pride that we should have as African Americans, but then also we need to be careful to highlight the diversity of African Americans or Black people in America. So I think there is room for some type of debate or discussion about how we properly label Black people in America.
Yeah, I think there definitely should be some debate because we have to remember that Negro was popular,
Mm-hmm.
colored people was popular, but now instead of colored people, we're people of color. I remember correcting a Cuban friend of mine not too
Mm-hmm.
long ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, when she said, use the term colored people. And I said, well, we don't really use that term anymore. She's like, I
Right.
thought we did. I said, no, 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 it's not colored people, but we are considered by white communities as people of color. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's not a term I like to use. I think that we're also wrestling with even that term now because we're lumped in, where you have those who are of various ethnicities or backgrounds lumped in with Black Americans, even though they may have a very different experience. Like
Yeah.
one of those highlighted
Mm-hmm.
with that interview with Vivek Ramaswamy and Don Lemon, where it was very combative. This was the interview that Don Lemon had with Ramaswamy shortly before his ouster, and it was slightly combative. And I think that Lemon took umbrage to the fact that Ramaswamy was saying that he was a person of color, which he would be considered a person of color with his because he has an Indian background, but comparing his experience to the Black experience, which, as we already highlighted, is different. But then you have the term African American, where, as Trick Daddy says, I've never been to Africa. I don't have any ties to Africa. So why is that prefix in front of how I identify? At the same time, though, that's the distinction that separates him from someone who is white American, who would have historically a different background, a different experience, have different challenges in the way that he navigates the country. And so we again, we would have to come up with maybe a different term or a different way of describing ourselves. And we've heard this too. Some people refer to themselves as Nubians. Some
Mm-hmm.
people describe themselves as just straight African, even though they are from the US and have been born in America. They still say, listen, my lineage goes back to the motherland. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just African, right? So, there's even a difference of opinion within our society. And that's why I call it a society of Black Americans, different pockets of communities in how we define ourselves and how we want to be framed. And I don't know if there's a universally accepted way, except for maybe saying Black American. But
Mm-hmm.
even within that, you have those who might come from other countries who do have a different experience than Black Americans who might have been descendants of enslaved Africans rather than Black Americans who were born here as first generation or second generation with ties to other countries within the diaspora, whether it is Africa, the Caribbean, Brazil, the Dominican Republic would be in the Caribbean, but all the
Right.
countries that
Yeah.
were part of the diasporic experience.
Yeah. And I guess, and sadly in America, as we've seen recently with some of um, the um, the the stories we hear coming in the wake of the Trump presidency, where people are more emboldened with their racism. We're all treated the same, whether you have the nuances of being Ghanaian American or an African American or considered yourself a Black American. In many ways, we face the same amount of racism, and that common bond, sadly, brings us all together into one group, because America just sees you as a certain way, and that's maybe, I don't know. I don't know how close we are to the ideal of the post-racial America, where we no longer see color, but there's some truth to be said. You are how you're treated, or So I don't. It's interesting to see. And then, as communications professionals, what is the PC term to use? What's the appropriate term to use in an era, again, where people self-identify? So you have to be very careful when even describing someone that may describe themselves as something other than African American or Black, because you can't assume that anymore.
Yeah, that's true too. Well, we're running out of time. I know that you had a fake news story of the day, DK, that you wanted to introduce. What do we have this week? Fake news story.
Oh, wow. Another video involving Haitians. There's a Haitian immigrant. Apparently there was a video during the election that was purportedly manufactured by Russians again. Crazy. From the Associated Press, that shows a Haitian immigrant voting multiple times, and it's clearly it was established as something that's clearly fake. It purportedly seemed to have happened in Georgia, but it was found to be fake and false and not true. It's another example of why we need to be very thoughtful when we look at social media and we ingest, or we take in all these news items or this information from online and then share them as if they're true. We don't always know if they're true or not. And some of the ones that are the most salacious and that reinforce some type of internal biases that you may have, or internal beliefs, you're more likely to believe is true. But it's really, really important to make sure that you're not sharing fake news. And by fake news, I don't mean things that certain people don't believe are favorable to them, but news that is really in its heart has nothing to do with the actual truth of what happened or associated with real activity.
Yeah, that's why you always have to verify. It's very important that when you're learning new pieces of information, that you learn how to also confirm and verify that information. Otherwise, if you accept it as truth and it's not, you will be misinformed, which was the overall purpose for some of this disinformation that is put out into the zeitgeist. So with that, we're going to end our episode 24 of the Capitol Press Club Legacy Podcast. I want to thank my man, Derek Kenny, and we'll see you next time. And if we don't see you in the next 2 weeks, happy holidays, and we'll catch you on